Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday. It's September 19th. This will be our chart lesson for today, and it was mostly sideways today. Um, Again, there's not really a consistent high price level on this range, although this is, I would say, right in this where I have the line here, right around 29, call it 29.1650. That's where we turn down more often than not. We did break above it once and a little bit here. On the low side, you can see we just kind of there was a little bit of a consistent area through here, but this is just not an easy range to trade, and you almost have to go to your short-term stuff. So if you struggled finding trades, don't feel alone. There's not a lot of trades here. There's not a lot of setups. It's just one of those days. Most of the setups were to the short side later in the day, and early on there just wasn't anything happening. I mean, you just had to kind of sit here and wait. You don't want to trade this, and this lasted from maybe 8:35 to just before 9 o'clock. So 30 minutes, you had nothing going on there. And of course, you might have got a little better setup than me right here. If you had a nice bearish bar, I wouldn't be afraid to take that. It is a double test of this high up here, and we're making lower highs each time. It's also a failed break out of here. So if you had a really good signal bar here, this would have been probably the trade of the morning, but I didn't feel like risking that, even on a double test. And unfortunately, that's a trade I just couldn't take on my chart. So, and if yours looks like mine, you probably couldn't take that trade either. So, because next time you take it, you'll get burned. But anyway, let's talk about the trades. It won't take long because there's not many, but you can see we spent most of the day in this range right here with a uh, failure out the low side, failure out the high side. But at one time we were trading in the overnight, we were trading way down here, and we just took off uh, just before the regular, a little bit, about an hour and a half before the regular opening, and we didn't turn down till we reached this high up here. So but anyway, let's talk about the trades. When I came in, we just had a failed breakout to the downside. And notice you got a leg and you're going sideways. So if you break out down here, you probably want to look for a measured leg. I didn't measure this. It looks pretty close. There's your first leg. And you'd probably want to measure from here. But you need to really measure from here too. And you see we didn't quite get that. So that might tell you, hey, we may bounce higher relatively strongly. We're a long way away from the EMA, and it's definitely a failed break lower. A nice bullish bar. It is generally you want to wait on a higher low, and we never get one. There's never one high or low here. It just goes straight up. So keep that in mind. If you didn't enter here, there's really not a good entry in here, unfortunately. So, but if you did catch that, you'd probably be done before just after the open, before early time part of the day. But notice we made a new high and then we moved down and we try to go higher again and make a double top, a little lower high, a big bearish bar. We're still a long way away from the EMA. I'm going to take that one. And sometimes you want to be a little concerned about this overlap here, but when you're this far away from the EMA and you're starting to get some congestion, it's probably going to go the other way. So that big bearish bar, I'm going to probably take that trade most times. And then we just got stuck in this that I talked about a minute ago. Don't try to enter that. You'll just be, you'll just get stuck in there. And if for some reason you did enter early and got stuck in there, when it came back up here, if you were, if it came back up or down and gave you a chance to get out at scratch or maybe make a tick or only lose a tick, I'd take it because you don't want to get hung up in that. Then you get that failed breakout. We already talked about it. It's a double test. Notice you made that high. You tested it once. You tested it twice. And notice how it's holding right on those closes and stuff. Just not bearish enough for me. and the signal bar that is, and this one takes off, but you don't know that ahead of time. So, you know, you really need to, if you don't follow the rules, it'll work occasionally, just enough to keep you trying it. But in the long term, it'll fail more often than anything. So, but then of course we break out the low side, and notice what happens. You got a leg down, and then another leg down, and so you got two legs down. We're probably going to bounce now. Notice you make the low, you get a first entry, move up, you get a second entry. So there's a failed second entry short right there. I gave this one a green because it's not really back to the trend line, and it's right back into what was support resistance right there. So, and because it's not a good signal bar, it doesn't really matter because it's a failed second entry to the downside. So but you don't have much room between here and here, and that's where it's been turning down every time. So, um, but your high was really up here on the last one. So you may let it break higher and back up a little bit and see if it'll take you on up. And then this is a perfect example of a nice little trap. They make it look how bearish that bar is. They make it look like it's going lower. But you got that trend line working up, and all it did was touch that trend line and turn up. And now you got a second entry long. Notice the new high, first entry, second entry. So I like that one. The only stipulation here is you got to have room to get out before here. So you may have to let that one break higher and drop a limit order a tick or two back. But you could have gotten filled all the way back to the very bottom of this original signal bar. So, when all you needed really was to let it back up a tick or so to have enough room. And then it's good for a scalp, nothing more. It wouldn't have mattered whether you let it back up or not, but that's the only way I recommend entering there, because you don't want it to run up here and touch like it did right here and then turn down. But just backing up one bar, that is a classic trap right there. They make that look real bearish, and people think you're going to get another leg down, and it moves one tick, traps everybody, and then it turns up. And they actually came back and tried to, it looks like they tried to run the stops on the longs here, and it took off again. And this one's tempting, but because it's got those two bars and they're both almost dojis and they're inside bars, I'd skip that trade. And again, it takes off. It is a little bit of a breakout pullback, and we tested this a couple of times, but just going back long right into that, I'm not crazy about it. If we'd had a good signal bar here, I'd probably say that one's worth risking because we'd already pushed through. So once you push through, it'll probably take off the next time. But I'd want a good signal bar, and you just don't get one. We run up, you get a close outside this real strong push up, move to a new high. Again, you're always better to wait on a lower high, but we're a long way away from the EMA. We do have a close outside a new high, and that's a relatively bearish bar. So when it broke lower, you could consider that one. But then when it went higher here and turned back down, I like going short there. And you might let it break below here. It went higher and then turned down and went out the other side all in one bar. So you might let it break lower and see if it'll back up just a tick or two. But sometimes you'll miss some good trades by doing that. But hey, I'd rather, I'm a little leery sometimes about going short right into the EMA. But with this being strong resistance up here and this being a range like day, it's probably going to come back and get back in the range again and maybe work lower. And you can see what happens. We end up with two legs down again before it goes sideways again. But we run down, we get a close outside, we try to go lower once, we try to go lower twice, and we get a little double test, and we get a big bullish bar. And so as long as you got room to get out before those highs again, I'd probably take that. It is a second entry long too. Pull back first entry, pull back second entry. Technically, it's really not. Technically, the second entry is right there and it fails. And then it looks like it's going to be a failed second entry short. But you definitely don't want to be going short there because we've already bounced there a couple of times, and that's the previous support resistance level. So if you did get burned there, that's not really a good setup for a short. And it turns out just to be a short trap. And you got to figure there's going to be some trap shorts there. So I like going long. But notice all the stems and so forth on both sides. You can tell that's a little trading range. I don't have the line drawn on this side. But you can see we're just kind of chopping around there. And that might have given you a little concern to go back long as well. But we just had this big leg down and we tried to make a new low twice and failed. So we may push higher again. And of course, when we come back up here and turn down, you get a big bear. It actually went higher and turns out it goes down. You get a big bearish bar. And if you'd drawn this line right here, which you really don't know the right angle here. You didn't know the right angle down here until here, and by that time you could have got it off this side first. So it didn't really help you. However, when this rockets back up and tests this again and it looks like it's going to go higher and turns down, I like going short right there. And this thing pushes on down, and you actually get a failed second entry long here that's tempting to go short. But again, now you've bounced across there way too many times. You sure can't go short there. Even though it drops down and moves lower, you can't go short right there. But it does pull back. It tests the trend line again, gives you your third touch, nice bearish bar. And so now you've pushed through. So if it takes off again, it'll probably get on through there with no problem this time. Generally, I'd like to see a break of this trend line and move to a new high, but really we just kind of came back across here, and you can see that we actually came back to it again right there. But because that's the confirmation of that trend line and the third touch, and because it's a double test of this area right here, I like going short right there. And then of course we just get stuck sideways again. You don't want to be entering in that. Just sit tight, and it takes you into 2 o'clock. So there just weren't a whole lot of trades today. Really what we had was a chance to get short off the highs, which were a little bit more consistent, although they're still not perfectly consistent. It was more consistent off this 29.1650 versus what we had. I mean, this was a fairly consistent level right here too. So, but because of this trend line or this two-tiered channel, I didn't want to take any longs in here, and by that time it's too late when it gets back into 2 o'clock. I wouldn't take that either. So you just didn't get any setups off that. So yeah, if you found this a little slow today and having to be real patient and a little bit difficult to find some trades, then it wasn't just you. It's because the price action just didn't give you a lot of opportunities today. So just remember that some days are going to be better than others, and today just wasn't one of those days. Still had a chance to. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trades in here, and all you need is 1 or 2 of them to really do well at this. So, just learn to be patient. I mean, that's the key to all this anyway, is being patient and not forcing trades. And that the average newbie will come in here and they're constantly looking for entries. And sometimes when you get right in stuff like this, just wait until you get a failed breakout and you get, of course, unfortunately, we didn't get a good signal bar there. And then we come down here and we don't really get one down here. You actually did have a decent signal bar right there, but this trend line's still in play. So there's too big a chance it'll push up and turn down and stop you out before it goes higher. But that was one you could consider. I mean, you could argue for that one to be green almost, just being that far away from the EMA on a failed break lower, just like this one up here. Although you don't have the, when you have that 1, 2, 3, 4, it ends up being 5 bars stacked up there before it really takes off. So That's the reason I didn't mark that one, but it's one you could consider. But anyway, actually, I wanted to read. Let me find the email I wanted to read. I hadn't read an email in a while since we're done a little bit early today. I'll read this email. Let me find it. Okay, I found this gentleman's email, and the reason I wanted to read this one is just because it reinforces what you hear me say so many times, and what you hear people come in a lot of times and comment and argue that it doesn't work or this doesn't work. But that was why I really liked his email, and so it might encourage some of you others that are at the same point he was at. But let me read this, and I think it's a good email, and I want to try to read these occasionally when I get a good one, and we got time basically. So it says, "Hey Mac, I just wanted to drop you a brief thank you note to tell you how much your system has changed my trading. I started watching your YouTube videos about 12 months ago and very quickly signed up for your premium section. I read your manual every Saturday and by now know every word of it. And as you often say, I see something different in it every time I read it. I went demo about 3 months ago, and for the first 2 months, I struggled to see the setups in real time. This last month, though, I'm really getting it. I live in London, so I spend 3 hours every morning doing my chart revision and your chart lesson before I start trading at 1300 my time, which is 7 o'clock your start time. So that's the same time I start, I assume is what he means there. I hear sometimes you get frustrated when people tell you it can't be done or you can't draw trend lines before the fact or the markets are too random. Well, I believed all those things before I discovered you. Late one night I heard one of your YouTube lessons. I thought this guy seems really sincere. It must be that calming southern accent. I hear that a lot, but anyway, and lack of the usual get rich quick sales nonsense. Anyway, I decided to follow everything you taught full time for 1 year, to follow all the rules without question and to not make up any new ones. Now I see nearly all the trades you take, and I don't have a whole bunch of additional silly ones that I used to take. I'm grateful for all the efforts you have made to help traders like myself get profitable and for all the questions of mine that you've answered. Many thanks, and he leaves his name there. But yeah, I mean, just remember that the real key to this is not just sitting here and taking your trades every day and at the end of the day packing up and going home. That's when your day really starts. After you've traded, the key is there's a couple steps. First, get as much screen time as you can get every day. Take If you're sim trading, just take every trade that you think you should be taking, following the rules. Don't worry if you're wrong or right. Don't monkey with the trades. Let them play out. Either just let it be wrong or right. And then at the end of the day, that's where your real work starts. Go study those trades. Learn your tendencies. Figure out your bad tendencies. Correct them. Find out what you did right and try to do more of it. But that's what makes you a better trader, is studying your own trades, learning your own tendencies, and correcting them. If you just come in here and trade every day and then at 3 o'clock or whatever time you get done, you close up and you go home and you don't study those trades, you're not going to get better. You're going to continue to make the same mistakes, but you'd be surprised how much it changes your trading to figure out what you did wrong. Look at each trade and say, while it's fresh on your mind so you can still remember what you were thinking when you took that trade. That's why I started doing this chart lesson to begin with, because it forces me to go back and study the chart every single day to find all the entries, to see if the ones that if I see after the fact what I saw during real time, and to learn where I made mistakes and correct them and figure out what I did good and to do more of that. And that's what makes you a better trader. And that's why I like doing this chart lesson. Even to this day, it forces me to study my chart at the end of the day and to look at the price action closely. And what I'll do is I would study my own trades. And then I'll go back to the beginning of the chart, start right where 7 o'clock is, and I'll just follow it through and I'll see every setup and every trade. And I'll mark them, and then that's what I do with the video, and then I go over them on the video lesson, and that reinforces it again. And people can say, well, anybody could come in and find the trades after the fact. Well, that's not true. A lot of people can't come in here right now and find the right trades. They can say, hey, this is where prices took off, but they can't explain to you what would make you want to enter there. That's the key. Yeah, anybody can come over here and put areas where you should enter. But if you go back and look where all the big moves came from today, off the important support and resistance. This was important resistance. That's where a big move came from. You could also say it was a failed break out of here, and that's where a big move came from. Big move up here came from a failed break, or I'm sorry, not a failed break higher, but a double top way away from the EMA after a failed break out of this range. Where did this big move come from? After a failed break out of that range. And these are the things we teach. And this was kind of I mean, that's what happened all day long. There were failed breaks. Even right here, it's a failed break out of this tight range. Down here, this was a failed break out of this little range. Really, when this took off, it's really a break out of this range. So we kind of had that happening all day. Then you got this little tight range, a failed break. You got this little tight range, a failed break lower. So it kind of repeated itself all day long, these failed breakouts. But look, you could also look at these trend lines. Where did the big move come from? Right off this trend line and right off this strong support. It's kind of a double and right at the EMA. And you'll see this over and over and over. So the key is to be able to find these places and recognize what prices are doing. It's not as simple as saying, okay, here's a trend line, there's your first break, you move to a new high, now I'm going to go short. You got to wait and kind of let it play out, and because if you entered right here, you might have been in too soon and you got burned. But then it pushes up, and you'll see this a lot. It'll push up and just barely go higher, and then it'll sell off. And then, but generally, if you wait on that lower high, like right here, it's a lot safer. And here's another lower high, basically, is all this is on a failed breakout. So just keep that in mind. But appreciate you sending the email. I love to get those kind of emails. I love to hear from people, because generally I only hear from the negatives, the people that can't make it, and the people that are struggling. Generally, the people that are doing well, they'll drop me a line every once in a while and say, hey, everything's going good, or everything's still going good. I'm getting better at this. But you don't hear from those people as much because everything's going good and they're busy trading. And I try to tell people that. I always hear people say, well, I want to why don't you have a forum, or why don't you do a trading room? You can't learn anything in those places, because I don't have time to do it myself. I barely have time to do what I do now. And if you sit in a forum, let me back up a step. When you go to these forums, successful traders do not hang out at those places. Successful traders are busy trading. There's always somebody in there that thinks they know and acts like they know and will tell you they know, but if they were really making money, they would be busy trading. And so you can't go there and listen to those people, because they'll spout off all the buzzwords, and they know all the buzzwords about trading and all that stuff, but that stuff doesn't work. It's wrong. But it's considered gospel because so many people sit there and talk about it and know it. And but at any rate, just be careful having trading rooms. And I hate to knock them, but I'm just telling you, I've never known anybody to go to a place like that and come away successful. Honest, maybe there are some, but I don't know any. And most people that were there early that end up succeeding, they come back and they say, people tell me that all the time. I used to hear that all the time, but I never paid any attention to it. But now I know what you meant. And if you do actually get somebody in one of those forums that really knows how to trade, they will crucify him and send him packing. It'll make his life so miserable that he won't stay there very long, because he will be the one that's really trying to teach people the right stuff, and they'll do him just like people come into our comments and into onto my website and try to tell me the same thing. It'll be those same people that try to tell you that it doesn't work, it don't work, you're wrong, you're leading people astray, this and that. And so I'll just I'll say it with a grain of salt. Just be careful going to those places and listening to those people, because they will steer you wrong and they'll crucify you if you try to teach them the right thing. I promise you. I tried it myself. So, and I've seen it. I've had so many of my former students come back to me and say, I went back and tried to help them, and they just, none of them will listen, and they won't, because it doesn't match everything they've learned from years and years that have been taught that's wrong. This stuff is just wrong. But anyway, enough from my soapbox today. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. We'll wrap up our week tomorrow. But I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.